13.4. In this video, let's take a look at how we can factor perfect square binomial. So back in module 12, I asked you to memorize the perfect square binomial formula. If I got a plus b whole thing squared, my answer is always going to look like a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So it turns out this a squared plus 2ab plus b squared is actually a trinomial. Okay, so that's the reason why these three examples here will end up looking just like a trinomial problem. But there is something special about these type of trinomial problem. Okay, so instead of factoring based on what this thing says, if I just factor this particular example exactly the same way how I will factor trinomial, just think about this. There's no greatest common factor here, right? So two parentheses. Think about this. For 16x squared, for 16, 1 times 16 is 16, 2 times 8, and there is so is there 4 times 4. So most of the time, our first instinct is using two numbers that are closest together, multiplied to give me that 16, which is using 4x and 4x. All right, 1. The factor of the last term is 1, which is only 1 times 1. So now think about this. What's my outer? My outer is 4. My inner is also 4. So you see, I got two of the same inner and outer, so that's why I combine them will be 8. Okay. So this problem is actually a perfect square binomial, which is 4x plus 1 times 4x plus 1, or you can say that's 4x plus 1 whole thing squared. Now, I actually would rather you write them out as two separate factors, okay, rather than put a square on top. And the reason why I mentioned that, so is really for module 14, when we begin to deal with rational expressions, okay. So for right now, get a habit of write them out, okay, rather than do square. All right, this problem I'm gonna have two different variables. I'm using x squared up front and y squared on the back. I'm gonna make my first term positive, okay. So here I do have a greatest common factor. By looking at it, I know I can factor out a 5. So I'm gonna factor out a negative 5 to make my first term positive. So if I factor out a negative 5, that will be 9x squared minus 12xy. Right? Negative 5 going to negative 40 is positive 4y squared. So by looking at it, this is actually a trinomial in the parentheses. So for 9x squared, I can use 3x and 3x. For 4y squared, I can use 2y and 2y. So let's see. My outer is 6. My inner is 6 combined, which is adding. That will give me my 12 in the middle. Right, since my middle term is negative, both of these got to be negative. Okay, so that's my answer. All right, this example, I believe I do have a greatest common factor because x repeated in all three terms. So if I factor out x, then I get y squared minus 8x plus 16. Okay, so this is a trinomial. As a matter of fact, this is actually a perfect square binomial here because for y squared, I'm going to use 1 and 1, or y and y. For 16, I'm going to use 4 and 4. All right, outer is 4, inner is 4. Combined will be a in the middle. And it got to be negative for both, right? Because that's negative 8. So when the last sign is positive, the two signs inside the parentheses are the same. Okay, all right, so just real quick 3 examples on how to factor perfect square binomial, which is basically same as factoring trinomial. All right, thank you for watching.